Welcome to Bitcoin Interface and Experience, focused on designing Bitcoin-based businesses and Bitcoin native brands, specifically for mass adoption. I, myself, am Sam. I am a design entrepreneur. I build Bitcoin-based businesses, specifically, there we go, in energy and consumer packaged goods, such as my latest business, Satoshi's Cereal. Previously, I also taught undergrad, continuing education, as well as professional workshops at a range of universities in New York City. What I have to offer, I in particular have no technical ability. So this is just solely product design, UI, UX, feedback, and guidance, as well as product development and marketing. To further specify, all I have is my tastes, and I mean that quite literally. So with that being said, be very clear, no financial advice. I am dyslexic. There is no legal advice nor illegal advice. There's no health nor medical advice. And I have no forward-looking statements. In fact, we're going to look a little bit back in history. My expertise is in augmented reality software, such as if you're designing your home or if you want furniture. This is naturally three-dimensional. Therefore, the way it's digitally represented should be three-dimensional. It also applies to shoes. You can design or customize a shoe in augmented or virtual reality. Got to give a shout out to the RGA office in Argentina, wonderful engineers. I grew up in Zimbabwe, and that probably explains the cereal as well as hyperinflation, because we have starving millionaires and billionaires, unfortunately even trillionaires in this world. And even a third grader in the lunch line knows that a new $20 bill is not better, or rather an old $20 bill is not better than a $10. Right? I barely passed third grade, but that was one of the things I learned. So I want to take a second before we jump in to thank the sponsors as well as the ecosystem, specifically PlebLab and Bitcoin Commons, thanks to Car, Jack, and Teresa, and the wider ecosystem here, as well as TimeChain. I'm personally not experienced with TimeChain, but I have a lot of experience in crowdfunding, whether it's, timestamp, whether it's for Kickstarter or Kiva. And I'm super glad to see things like timestamp come to Bitcoin, because it's finally time for this technology. I also want to thank Unchained, whatever that is. I have notes. It says to secure your Bitcoin with confidence. Sounds very relevant. Now, jumping into Satoshi's Cereal, this is an example of a brand that's made at PlebLab as well as in the matrix. If you want to break out of the matrix, the first thing you got to do is go into it. And augmented reality is here to stay as an entertainment tool, but also as a productivity tool. There are many devices, form factors, and a lot of stacks. What is relevant, in addition to all of the different devices, is that this moment when augmented reality launched with these specific icons made augmented reality shoppable at the operating system level. So by default, you can check out with your native wallet by looking at a three-dimensional object. The biggest and most contentious point around this is file format. But you could use this to say, preview a tiger or an airplane, see how big they are, see how they move. And this, seemed like a game or funny at first, but in fact, these are legitimate Bitcoiner purchases. So like augmented reality is here to stay, similarly, Bitcoin is also here to stay, but not everyone knows that. So how can we get the word out for mass adoption, like some of our early adopters here? Well, I have a couple of things to share with you. The first that you probably already know is that the future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed, according to William Gibson, author of Neuromancer. So let's look at design and the word design, how this is relevant and useful to us. In particular, UX and UX design, what user experience means is it's a system of everything. That's according to Don Norman. Don Norman can stand in this pose. He probably taught Steve Jobs this pose, because he designed some of the first range of Macintosh and Apple products. He speaks about the box, getting the box, what's inside the box, opening it up and seeing a very scary computer. I think that we can take that similar metaphor or framework of thinking and apply that to Bitcoin right now. That's what a lot of people perceive Bitcoin to be, is something that's scary. Now, when we look at experience and experience design, I often say experience is a good term to use as a substitute until we know what we are specifically talking about and we've identified it, such as a specific touch point. Is that specifically a UI button on your application, or is it a button or physical signing device, right? In BitDevs, we often have these conversations about what the most appropriate terminology is. And internally, that's important to understand what you are creating. An experience might also be a feeling, such as an anxiety when sending a transaction and there's no feedback. You might think the app or the website is broken if there's lack of an artifact or a touch point like an animation, so that you know that the page or the website has not crashed. And in this case for Nike, the experience is fast. Now, when we speak about interface design, the journey is the interface. The car is not necessarily in the interface. The shoebox, even if it's made of gold, is not necessarily the interface. So the interface, since that is the journey itself, and therefore the interface becomes something that is not a screen, or at least not one screen. To purchase gold cleats and have them shipped to you from a large company, you have multiple product owners for, say, the product detail page versus the checkout flow. You have multiple companies, and this is essential to understand because in a modern environment that is economically advanced, we no longer have GDP as the term. Very often GNI is used, gross national income, because the majority of production does not come from physical products, it comes from services. In our industrialized American mindset, we like to think about it as a product, but the craft is not just the shape and the color. As an example, in these service-based businesses, Airbnb owns no homes, Uber owns no cars, and that is the relevance of interface design. It's not just one screen. And Bitcoiners, we might often think like this, good at connecting the dots together. Design thinking, sense making is good at organizing things. And at the same time, I think that the step before that is more important and more valuable. The design makers. I chose this image because it really conveys a range of tools that you can use, whether that's service design, body storming, which is similar to brainstorming and live action role playing. You might also have physical prototyping. This could be the checkout for a physical location or, say, an airline. And in the back is how the airline processes or how it works. That is like a service blueprint. This was really hot in the 70s and 80s when America made things. Since we no longer have factories, we no longer really think in swim lanes. But the value of this kind of documentation and co-creating it is that this visualizes the process involved in delivering an experience. So this shows the not just the distribution, but also the consumption of it. This kind of tool, it shows us a few things. It visualizes your hungry customer in the front stage, as well as your service provider that's in the front stage, like maybe a waiter, right? In your backstage, behind the line of visibility, you have a chef. These other two swim lanes at the top and the bottom were formerly for your front-end interface and then your back-end interface. That is a misnomer, though, because communication goes in between the roles, right? Your customer might place an order with your waiter, and then that information can be delivered to the chef in a range of systems, whether it's paper or whether it's digital display. So the artifacts run between these swim lanes, such as the chef who makes the cereal will pass that off to the waiter, who will pass it off to the customer, who sends Bitcoin back. So this gives you structure for your very Alice sends Bob Bitcoin stories for things that provide value, where you can add value. So you can use this to design new experiences and identify those artifacts that make your service tangible. Now, to review the design process for mass adoption, I have whole presentations on design processes And since you're familiar with technical analysis and charts, they all look like this. This is an example from IDEO. The value here is this cycle of coming up with more ideas, diverging, and then converging on fewer ideas, and then testing in these moments in between, which is the difference between the design process and the innovation and adoption process. You might have heard of the Diffusion of Innovations, I believe, by Roger Moore. This book is called Crossing the Chasm, about marketing and selling disruptive products to mainstream customers, which is something that we are very much trying to do with Bitcoin. The chasm, in fact, is between these phases of adopters, where things technically can be hard for larger groups of people to adopt. The way that you might think about these different phases of people who are onboarded to the new technology is you have your innovators, like a lot of you here, who are engineers and building companies in the space on the protocol. You might have early adopters who are holders and have been diamond handing and would like to contribute. And then you have everyone else, and that's where we need to focus on the adoption. And I know that we often say, hey, this cycle is about X, institutional adoption, and then really it's next cycle has much more. It would be great if we can start mass adoption and the next cycle will continue to have much more. Fortunately, if you look at cycles, we also have segments. The valuable part, though, is how you can get the early majority to cross the chasm from the right to the left. Something that's simple, understandable, approachable, dare I say, easy to digest. Because if it's something that many people can understand, it's very easy for those who are more technologically inclined to understand. Now, this is a different chart, a different bell curve. There is relevance here to this as well. You might often see this meme on X. The value here is that if you can create, say, a product, maybe a butter knife, or a knife that works for someone who would cut themselves with a butter knife and someone who's like a chainsaw ice master sculptor, you can make a knife that can work for many people. What you don't want to do is, you probably don't want to make a knife or an eating utensil that is extremely complex, even though it is supposed to be applicable to a target market, such as somebody with arthritis. If you have this as fork and spoon, I don't think that applies to many people. There are probably very few hand conditions that can hold what looks to me more like VR controllers. That would be a good invention to eat food in VR. It's not necessarily a good invention for someone with arthritis to hold physically. And if you create, say, something like this OXO Good Grip peeling knife, that can apply to both somebody who has arthritis as well as your Bitcoin maxi carnivore who would like to try a tomato on his 5 burgers. So being specific but not overfitting your interface or experience. And we continue to see this in physical product design, where we really should understand for ages that this simple design is going to be more usable than what looks like almost a custom form fitting design. The majority of hands that have arthritis, for example, are not going to be able to use the cane that visually appears to have an affordance that shows you your hand can grasp it. Will not work if your hand cannot make that shape. This is important to understand because if you want to create something that works for everybody, theory is that you can design for the extremes and create something that applies to everybody, sort of universal design. So how do we go for mass market adoption, say, with marketing once you have something that you want to take to market? Great marketing doesn't show the product. It very often doesn't show the product. There is a point in Got Milk commercials where they do show the milk. You can probably point that to a specific time in hyperinflation. But the value about advertising and marketing is that it shows the benefit, not the feature, the experience, not just the interface. Got Milk does not have milk at all. It doesn't show the product. It shows what you get is not just the liquid, it's the feeling that you will have after drinking milk. It might feel like flying across Gotham or another city once you get the cold liquid in your body. So it's the why, not the how, not the what. You can look at Simon Sinek for more about why. Because if we want to speak about interface, this is technically the interface to the product of milk, as well as the tutorial to how to drink milk. You don't necessarily need to show a physical device if you were making software. Those kind of assets, the mock-up of your app or website in a phone gets outdated very fast, and you are going to want to focus on developing the product and not updating mock-ups. Marketing is also not about how it's made. Personally, I've never tasted with milk or raw milk, but raw milk, for example, is also not about the process that makes the milk and produces the milk. It is about the lack of the process in producing the milk for raw milk. And it's also not necessarily about the source. It's not about the cow or the thing that makes it. Brands with cows, very often they don't even sell milk. They sell the opposite of cow. What's the opposite of cow, everybody? Anybody? Chicken. Yes. The opposite of cow is chicken. So cows sell chicken. Cows also sell computers. It'd be kind of, you know, we have there's the cheese or the butter with the cow on it. It's a cute smiley cow. You usually don't get like the cute smiley cow on the like pack of ground beef that you buy, right? Now, once you have the product and you know how to message it, how do you start testing the product for iterative product development? There are a couple things that sound similar: user testing and usability testing. We might just refer to this as user research. Are we making the right thing? Is this something that people want? And the process to go about that is to listen to user feedback, ask them, can you help me understand why? And listen, because the customer is not always right. Here, launching Satoshi cereal, here's market feedback that yes, this is a correct direction. One thing as an entrepreneur that you probably understand already is that you have to eat shit, because people will tell you that you were wrong, such as that's not a good name, change the brand name, and maybe it is a great brand name and everything is already set in stone. But another relevance that's going to be clear or is already clear to you as an entrepreneur in terms of user feedback, and the fourth point is that this really defends against feature creep. A lot of the feedback is, hey, you can add this protocol or this token or this coin. There's only cereal in the box. And in fact, in terms of marketing and product development, you want to be super focused, such as Ford cars, Model T. You can have any color, but it has to be black. This keeps your code very clean. It's much less to test. You want to avoid feature creep. You might also know that Henry Ford also said, if you ask customers what they would want a faster horse. Now, some of the feedback I received in particular, not from Mark, but other eaters or holders, is that, Sam, I'll work with you on anything except Satoshi cereal. I said, why is that? I'm furiously taking notes. He says, it's bland, it tastes like shit, you need colors and flavors. And I just took the feedback and I said, thank you, and followed up with him. I'm glad I stuck to my guns and just having cereal, not having crazy colors, because that's feature creep, but you also want to future-proof yourself for new regulatory changes, which this crowd is very attuned to. So fortunately, this product is not like other products that have cereal, which literally gives children cancer. Now, in terms of usability testing, no longer are we testing, are we building the right thing? Here, once we have a degree of feedback, we are testing, are we building the thing right? This focuses on how to build the product. You want to test your product with people, preferably in person, with a minimum of 3 people in separate sessions. 3, because that's a minimum you need to get a curve. If you test with 6 people, that doubles your confidence. And the cost of that should be N coffees, or in my case, N cereals. Now, an example of the kind of findings you can gather from testing a product in person. I don't launch anything physical that doesn't go 1,000 hours of testing. Putting the cereal box out, asking people to scan, or putting the cereal box out, people want to scan it. The QR code at the bottom is harder to scan. My perception is cereal, top shelf. I only get top shelf. That's going to be easy to scan, right? But the context of the supermarket is very different than the context of your dinner table or breakfast table, right? So elevate the QR code, make it easy to scan. Now, functionally, what we're doing here is once new users or non-Bitcoin holders see about Satoshis, by scanning and visiting the URL, we are already training users to be able to scan, receive, accept Bitcoin and Lightning. Now, more about being in person and testing in person. There's something called focus groups, and that really is in the lab. That's not the breakfast table. If you want to understand what a focus group is, well, we can go straight to the source of truth, digital.gov. Focus groups, they are LI, they are not usability studies, and they will not reveal problems with your website or application, LI. This information is correct. Running a focus group will not reveal problems about your product. If I have the 10 of you who are in here now, we really get to group think probably very fast, and the context is totally different. Now, personally, I'm pretty confident that this Bitcoin thing is going to work out, but if any engineers need to grab extra hours, digital.gov might be hiring. If you want to help fix this, here full time is 35 hours. So arguably you could say focus groups would make sense for consumer packaged goods, but history has largely proven otherwise. When Coke developed New Coke, they tested a new formula versus Pepsi. The context in which they tested was a focus group. It was inside, was it an individual person? Was it multiple? Is it a can that's cold outside, or is it a small Dixie cup? So the context is entirely different. Coke launched New Coke, it totally bombed because the context in which you consume it are different. You can go to Nielsen Norman Group and read more about focus groups. Wall Street Journal says no in 2016. And the rationale for that is the perception that people have about a product or a brand. You can glean that or infer that through analytics without having to produce anything except pixels. Now, when you get to something that is functional that you want to test, you can use a platform like usertesting.com. This is for remote user testing. It's approximately $10, $15 a test. It's a public company. This is, let me first tell you the value, then I'll tell you the danger. The value is that it screen records somebody's device, whether it's a computer or a phone. It transcribes the audio. So when you give a user a story such as go to Satoshio's cereal and buy a box of cereal, are they able to find the specific pages? Are they able to add it to cart and check out? There's definite relevance here. And you can test on websites, APKs for Android, and TestFlight for iOS. And that's critical because say you're testing device level capabilities such as integration with the operating system level wallet, you can't test that. You can test that as a website, as a click-through, but you will only be able to test device-specific capabilities like the sensors when building an application. Now, the call out that I have to make, especially going in this bull market, is please don't do this. Obviously, you're not going to do this on people's wallets to expose their seed phrase. You're seeing more alerts to watch out for tools like TeamViewer. So like any tool, there are two sides to the capabilities of technology. Now, which brings me to the point that I want to encourage you to test in person. It's much easier to get a pulse on people's vibes that way. And some behaviors you only realize in person, such as took multiple users for me to understand that people were trying to pay with a Web3 wallet instead of being able to pay with Bitcoin or Lightning. So there's a little bit of education there. But since this is a platform that is not my own, I don't get analytics in terms of what people are trying to use to scan. So this is why I encourage people to test in person. And because the behaviors are very different than people's words. A lot of people say that they only buy organic, when in fact, if you go into their home and are invited to take photos of their fridge, or if you look at analytics of their shopping habits, the behaviors are very different. Now, quickly to get into something that's iconic, in 2D app interface design, icons are an important entry point to any new technology, especially magic internet money. Very quickly, as an intro to icons, I think this is fine, accessible navigation. One reason, buttons with text labels perform better. So that can increase that functional activity in your metrics on that. Now, this is important because you don't want to introduce a new feature in a pop-up in most cases. I actually think the rest of the icons are questionable, whereas Grok seems fine to me. And stylistically, that's because the house has round edges, but the magnifying glass has a sharp stem. The bell has sharp corners, and the envelope has round corners. I would think, personally, that the stem of a magnifying glass and the end of a bell are round, whereas Grok itself seems fine. And the reason why Grok as a button with the word is fine is because very often you see tutorials that are onboarding tutorials, or hey, here's a new feature. It's a carousel that you have to swipe through. You can read Nielsen Norman Group. There are things that you can better spend your design and development time on, such as contextual guidance. Instead of taking up the whole screen, here you can see just an example of a portion of the Photoshop screen introducing a new capability. And this you could call, say, an advanced tooltip. You have opportunity to drill down and learn more, or escape, whether through clicking outside of the tooltip or with an X button. So in summary, this kind of UI is actually new and not bad. You should try it. And in fact, literally, you can pop a tooltip that looks like this on top of the interface. Last note for tooltips or coach marks, they should be in a different style than the rest of your interface. Accessibility is extremely important. Say you build an application, you need to make it accessible. Not only does that make it usable by people who have disabilities, it offers personalization. Bitcoiner example, Nostr. Great technology, ton of clients. Very few or no Nostr clients enable dynamic text size driven by the operating system. Those capabilities are important. If you have, say, your grandmother using a Bitcoin inheritance capability, she might want to see the text larger and have it set larger. If you are, developing a trading application, that target market might prefer more information density. Accessibility is super important, and it shouldn't be done as a separate sprint or a separate project. It needs to be baked in the process as well as within testing. And this is important because if you do things, by doing things the right way, you future-proof yourself. By giving every interface element an actual text label, so it doesn't just say X when you're in voiceover mode, it says close if you're using a screen reader to navigate your device or interface. This future-proofs you, so as we get new form factors in natural user interfaces of, say, voice interface with AI, your application is primed to be accessed and executed with voice interface, even for people who are not blind. Onboarding patterns. Don't put like a series of pop-ups or just a login field as the first thing of your app. You want to show the value. You can check out useronboarding.com. Got some great examples from Coinbase in 2019 or 18. Dark UX patterns are something that you can use to nudge a user to complete an action that might not be in their best interest. In fact, that's what design itself does. It nudges people. Whether you choose to nudge them to stake and not see where they can unstake their Bitcoin, or whether you nudge them to Bitcoin L1 and not abstractions and alternatives, you can use a tool how you like. An example of a UX pattern used for a dark intent is Wall Street Journal. Famous for years. Even if you had Wall Street Journal digital, the only way you could cancel was by calling Wall Street Journal or writing them a letter. Important tip, no ghost buttons. When the iPhone was new, we had these really big chunky buttons with gradients so you knew you could tap them. Then flat design made everything really quick and it cheapened design, and it actually made things less usable. These ghost buttons, you cannot see them, so I had to call them out. Ghost buttons are boo. Aqua was great. Aqua design system or language by Apple. And it looked like you could touch the button. Buttons are actually touchable and three-dimensional, just like most of the buttons on your light switch or car dashboard or physical interfaces. Same with digital interfaces now. This existed since 2018 as well. It's just been sunsetted, and now every large tech company has their own stack. So, and the last thing I have for you, what's available now on Bitcoin at scale with device level capabilities? Google Materials. It says AB because the URL is Google Fonts. You have an icon that is now a B or a Bitcoin symbol. So you don't have to design all of these custom things such as like an X for close or a $sign. You don't want to design that. Google is giving it to you now. So is Apple. Apple's SF symbols, if you're building an application, you might not be able to afford custom cart icons or close icons. Apple gives these glyphs to you, so you can use them straight in Xcode.
Yeah, Bitcoin logo.
And we have not only the Bitcoin logo, we have Bitcoin icons and glyphs for many different use cases or scenarios. We have all of them, and we only have Bitcoin. And it has animations. So if you want to say, hey, I'm gonna deposit my Bitcoin to like triple, quadruple cold storage, you can have it as send, right? Bitcoin to send. If you decide to deposit your Bitcoin in an offshore centralized exchange in a nice location because it sounds tropical and exciting, you're probably going to get Bitcoin turns to flame. So these glyphs are available for you in Apple Developer Tools. Please swing by Austin Bitcoin Design Club. I'm not sure who chose the acronym. I was going to say autistics are welcome, dyslexics are welcome, and apparently we are sponsored by ADHD glasses. So be sure to wear those outside. Thank you so much. Stay safe if you don't have those glasses on. And thank you to PlebLab. I'll see you at top building.
You want to see if you have any questions?
Sure.
Do we have any questions in the audience? Here in the comments? Let me see. Hang on 1 second, Sam.
Sure. So you can get the Bitcoin symbol and put it on a button in Swift UI, and then the next step is tap to check out. So
Have you seen like any other indicators that they're adding stuff?
Bitcoin white paper was added a while ago.
Yeah, well, I feel like that was a cheeky engineer.
But
that put that in there.
I think the best example are the number of applications that are getting approved and the kind of applications. And in terms of getting your application approved, that's where the Apple resources really help, and using their design language and their toolkits and highlighting those capabilities will increase
That's a good
chances.
point. So like if they're putting these icons and everything into their design kits, then they must also, like how could they go against you submitting a Bitcoin application to their app store if they literally are putting like design support for Bitcoin?
Yeah, and I think the device level capabilities open up a lot. One thing that people often overlook is the default mobile wallet and cards in the mobile wallet. Brands can create cards and not have it be a financial card. It can be a membership card, and it can be installed in the wallet. That wallet card can trigger notifications based off of location, and you can nudge people to, say, McDonald's, or say to a gas station with a new deal. Most people don't uninstall a membership card in their digital wallet after they add it, and most people don't turn the notifications off. So that's a very good tool at the device level as well, which is not an app.
Sam, there's no questions in there, but what are you working on with the AR stuff? Is it anything that that is relevant to this talk?
Certainly. Augmented reality, it's very much here to stay. I think people often talk about metaverse, compared to augmented reality, where we might say Bitcoin versus compared to crypto. I think it's very important to be here. And in terms of, let's just say the tech stack of augmented virtual reality, that mixed reality spectrum. If the metaverse, for the metaverse to exist, we need magic internet money for the metaverse. And I think Bitcoin is a good magic internet money, and augmented reality is a way to increase adoption.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts on AI and AI tooling impacting development of whether it's AR or UI UX?
Sure, I think the concept of artificial intelligence accelerating human capabilities, whether it's engineering or design, is legitimate. And I think that's one reason it's more important to be with people who use your product and see how they use it, because the buttons are already here for us, right? We know all the rules and answers and the paradigms for traditional 2D interface design. How you go from one device to another, take that information or something that's valuable, those portions that are unseen, I think that's harder to solve, and I think humans are the ones to solve that. But with AI, I think there are great capabilities, such as if you look at an accessibility story, this is going to be extremely easy to implement with Copilot. It's more like accepting the changes of something that is standardized. Thank you for the question. Great.
Somebody else has any other questions?
Thank you.